Wolf 359 is not, or no longer, just the system, but the battle, as abbreviated but commonly understood. Few events, in Star Trek or otherwise, are so impactful that places metonym. On that day in 2367, 40 Federation starships faced off against one Borg cube. 39 were destroyed, 11,000 were killed. The watershed two-parter for Star Trek The Next Generation was bloody, figures confirmed after the fact by Admiral Satie in the Drumhead. What could only be suggested in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2 became the explosive opener to Star Trek Deep Space Nine as a series, loss magnified by Warp Core breach for the central character, and by the tragic irony that all was to end in the graveyard scene. The survivors, including those assimilated, could only go on to live with it. Debate over the identity of the 39 ships of the graveyard continues. To establish a full list from canon might forever be impossible, though evidently a handful of vessels have been positively identified on screen. Others have been deduced elsewhere by the likes of Ex Astris Scientia, or filled out by the Wolf 359 project, and or Star Trek Online. Amongst all the creative kit bashing was notably the Nebula class. Later, of course, the Borg threat provided the Defiant. And of course, there's the USS Ferric, a ship assimilated just prior to the Battle of Wolf 359 according to the Wolf 359 project. For Lieutenant Steve Levy, Wolf 359 was an inside job. In this case, I might have been part of it all along. I'm Sean Ferric for TrekCulture, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Wolf 359. Number 10, Granola Graveyard. In The Best of Both Worlds Part 2, approximately 1 minute and 50 seconds of screen time is physically spent at the Wolf 359 system. Of that, about 27 seconds are shots of the destroyed fleet at the graveyard scene. To depict those precious seconds, time was also a limiting factor behind the scenes. As detailed on the DVD extra New Life and New Civilizations, Star Trek The Next Generation visual effects coordinator Gary Hutzel and team had literally a period of days to construct battle wreckage from any and all bits of ships that they could get their hands on. That included spare parts from The Next Generation and feature models taken out of storage, as well as model kits glued together every which way and battle scarred. The Borg are pretty good shots, in the words of Michael Okuda. To film the graveyard scene, ships were hung on fishing wire and captured by motion control camera in 3 individual passes: Beauty, Matte, and Fire. Wanting to show a sense of scale, but without the time and budget to shoot countless smaller and smaller pieces of ship wreckage into the distance of the battlefield, Hutzel and team also turned to more innovative methods. Instead, we would spill granola onto velvet and spread it out, Hutzel noted on the Blu-ray extra Regeneration Engaging the Borg. As for non-breakfast cereals, certain much smaller elements of wreckage were, in fact, constructed. Shown in the reference work The Art of Star Trek, a model of a battle-damaged Type 7 shuttlecraft, the USS Liberator NCC 67016, hatch blown off with dead plastic crew member inside, was made for the graveyard scene, but never visible on screen. Minutiae from the scripts also give further, technically non-canonical detail about the fleet lost that day. The final draft of The Best of Both Worlds Part 2 notes that Admiral Hansen's vessel is Galaxy class. In a line ultimately cut from the revised final draft of Emissary, Sisko states that Admiral Hansen has deployed the Gage, as well as the Kyushu and the Melbourne, thus adding a potential name to the list of 39. For Commander Shelby's list at the view screen in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2, a last-minute decision in post-production also changed the originally scripted and recorded the Chekhov to the Tolstoy. Even with an H, as per the playwright, the Chekhov was a little too close to home. Number 9. Who shot JL? "You've ruined our summer," shouted a fan to Patrick Stewart at the set of traffic lights on the Pacific Coast Highway in 1990, as the actor recounted in Resistance is Futile, assimilating Star Trek The Next Generation, Part 3, The Collective. Unlike Dallas a decade prior, at least viewers didn't have to wait months to find out who done it in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2. Who shot Jean-Luc was never the question, to which the answer was always writer and executive producer Michael Piller. The story of the two-parter, the story of Wolf 359, was most personally his. "When we finished the first half, we had no idea what the second half would be," noted Rick Berman in Captain's Logs, the unauthorized complete Trek voyages. At the same time, Piller wasn't sure he was going to return for Season 4. "I found myself in the position of Riker, who was trying to decide whether he was going to leave the ship or not," Piller added in Captain's Logs. Piller did eventually re-sign on the dotted line, but found he'd written himself into a corner with his own cliffhanger. Getting Locutus, and indeed everyone else, out of the Borg imbroglio proved difficult. I had created an unsolvable problem, Piller insisted on the DVD Extra Mission Overview Year 4. Only by listening to the characters did he come up with the idea to use the Borg's interdependency against them to put them to sleep. As the rest of the world wondered if Patrick Stewart was making a quick exit, Piller completed the final draft script of The Best of Both Worlds Part 2 on the 2nd of July 1990. Budget and time aside, the aftermath of Wolf 359 might also have been an afterthought. Battles are the stuff I don't like writing, as Piller admitted in Captain's Logs. Number 8. Prophetic reference. You exist here, insisted the wormhole aliens. The Battle of Wolf 359 was a focal point for Commander Sisko. He'd lost the Saratoga, he'd lost his wife. Memory, as much as trauma and grief, makes a mockery of linear time. Without emissary, without the emissary, it is unlikely Wolf 359 would be quite so ingrained in our collective consciousness, pun intended. We couldn't afford to do it then, so we just made as huge a fight as we could make in our time frame, noted VFX coordinator Robert Legato on the DVD Extra Deep Space Nine scrapbook Year 1. Just part of the Battle of Wolf 359 became one of the biggest scenes they'd ever done, requiring about 13 or 14 days to film compared to the average 4. What made it to screen was significantly less than what was put to camera, however. As Legato reported in the Star Trek Deep Space Nine companion, the script said that they were right in the middle of this big, fierce, ugly battle, and I had tons of debris in all the shots. Ships that were burning, on fire, flying past the camera. Legato had even gone to great lengths to ensure that the names on the models matched those given by Commander Shelby in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2. The result was much bigger than anything seen on a TNG show. In the end, a change to the as-yet unfilmed live-action sequences meant that Legato had to go back and take all the extraneous ships out. There was one distinct consolation, however, as Emissary won the 1993 Emmy for Outstanding Special Visual Effects. Number 7. Saratoga on High. As shown on the movie magic episode Space Effects: The Space Race, the scale for the explosion of the Saratoga for Emissary required filming be moved from in-house at production company Image G to a much larger soundstage on the Paramount lot for safety reasons. This was the early 90s. Blowing things up for television risked more than the computer processor. To capture the shots needed, a breakaway model of the Saratoga, Miranda class, was wrapped with explosive primer cord, aka detonation cord or blasting rope, then hoisted vertically into the air over a camera which filmed upwards in slow motion at 240 frames per second. The camera was shielded from debris by a sheet of Lexan, it's sort of a transparent polycarbonate thermoplastic, and a fan. Usually, for some reason, everything goes in threes, noted Legato on the movie magic episode. First bang wasn't a boom, so even more explosives were added to another breakaway model. Second time didn't quite work either, so a third and final Saratoga model was rigged and sent to high heavens just right. Number 6. The ship's not bashed. 39 of 40 leaves 1, though exactly which one is still very much a matter of debate. There are, in fact, 2 serious contenders for sole survivor ship of the Battle of Wolf 359. Possibility number 1 is the USS Ahwahnee. Registry number may vary. It was a Kitbash Cheyenne class made of 2 Galaxy-class saucers and 4 marker pens for nacelles. It has been positively identified amongst the graveyard in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2 by reference website Ex Astris Scientia. An internal list of starships for Star Trek The Next Generation, dated 26th of September 1990, made available via Trek Docs, gave the Ahwahnee as destroyed by the Borg at Wolf 359. The 3rd edition of the Star Trek Encyclopedia from 1999 by Michael and Denise Okuda noted only that the ship was lost in the Battle of Wolf 359. In the interim, however, the Ahwahnee had been visible on screen, in name only on an Okudagram, as part of the tachyon detection grid in Redemption Part 2. The 4th edition of the Star Trek Encyclopedia from 2016 changed its entry, noting that the Ahwahnee was damaged or destroyed by the Borg at the Battle of Wolf 359 and later salvaged. Most recently, in 2024, the Wolf 359 project, a vast fan oral history of the Battle of Wolf 359, included a comprehensive breakdown of the Awani's participation in and salvage from the conflict. It records the Awani as having been deployed as part of the third wave, adding that whilst none of the crews survived the battle, the ship itself was found to be in relatively good condition. Possibility number 2 for sole survivor is the USS Endeavour, Nebula class, also present in the Redemption tachyon grid. Whilst ex-Astra Scientia categorically states that there is no evidence that the USS Endeavour was at Wolf 359, the Star Trek Encyclopedia 4th edition notes the opposite. Captain Amasov of the Endeavour faced the Borg in battle at Wolf 359, and his ship was the only one to survive the encounter. Later, the encyclopedia qualifies its stance somewhat, and not without some shaky reasoning. We know that the Endeavour was still around in 2373 because it was part of the armada that met the Borg in Star Trek First Contact. Nevertheless, Amasov's first-hand experiences with the Borg, from which Janeway read in Scorpion Part 1, had to have been recorded before the Voyager departed from Deep Space Nine in 2371, which was before the Borg battle in Star Trek First Contact. It therefore seems likely that the Endeavour and Amasov were also at Wolf 359 in 2367. The Wolf 359 project, on the other hand, gets around the debate rather nicely, stating that the Endeavour was not part of the battle, but that it did lead the immediate rescue and recovery efforts. Number 5. Wolf 35 and 7 of 9. In Infinite Regress, Voyager's proximity to a malfunctioning Borg vinculum caused 7 of 9 to manifest the identities of various assimilated individuals. Amongst them was the mother of Lieutenant Gregory Bergen, an officer aboard the USS Melbourne. She was supposed to meet him at Wolf 359. Caught in the battle, we can only assume Bergen's mother was captured in her escape pod. And though, at one point in the episode, 7 does refer to the emergent personalities as her victims, there's no reason to believe she was directly responsible for their assimilation. Lieutenant Bergen's exact fate remains unknown. There is a bigger mystery behind all those who were confirmed assimilated at Wolf 359, a list to which we can add Dr. Riley Fraser of the USS Roosevelt from Unity, and Laura, last name and ship not given, from Unimatrix Zero and Unimatrix Zero Part 2. As Captain Picard noted to the Borg Queen in Star Trek First Contact, that ship and all the Borg on it were destroyed. Her Majesty could rely on non-three-dimensional methods, but how did the others escape the exploding cube? The Star Trek The Next Generation novel Greater Than the Sum from 2008 gives a simple enough answer. Before the cube's destruction at Sector 001, some of the assimilated Starfleet personnel were sent back to the Delta Quadrant in a scout sphere. More recently, the trailer for the upcoming JTV FX project Wolf 359 The Massacre 2, to be released in full on the 24th of September 2025, also featured Dr. Fraser and Laura, in this case pre-assimilation. Number 4. The Klingons are coming. The Klingons are sending warships, said Admiral Hansen over subspace in The Best of Both Worlds Part 2. Despite a lot of speculation and reasonable doubt from episodes such as Unity, there has been no definitive on-screen evidence that the Warriors ever made it to the Battle of Wolf 359. StarTrek.com's logic was once devastatingly simple. Hansen's armada didn't last long enough for expected Klingon aid. In Unity, it is certainly true that there were Klingons amongst the former Borg on the planet in the Necrit Expanse. Add that to Riley Fraser's assimilation at Wolf 359, there was a degree of correlation without probable causation. Chakotay's visions within the cooperative neural link also contained footage from the Battle of Wolf 359 from Emissary, interspersed with shots of various Klingon ships, in fact re-edits from The Way of the Warrior. At best, that is only evidence the Klingons engaged the cube at some point on its way to Sector 001. Outside of canon, others have been more optimistic, or pessimistic in today's not necessarily the best day to die sense. For example, Ghosts, the 10th issue of the Marvel Star Trek Voyager comic book series published in 1997, depicts several Klingon ships, including at least 2 Katinga class and 1 Vortshak class, engaged at the Battle of Wolf 359. In JTV FX's Wolf 359 The Massacre 2 trailer, multiple Klingon ships can be seen fighting alongside the Federation. Towards the end, the trailer even features, spoiler alert, Klingon General Kurok, as seen in Unimatrix Zero and Unimatrix Zero Part 2. The character's time and place of assimilation are never specified in those episodes, however. Number 3. Borg games. Several non-canon games have featured the Battle of Wolf 359 over the years. In the 1996 video game Star Trek Borg, for example, Q sends the player, Cadet Quaylon Furlong, back in time 10 years to the battle to avenge their father's death aboard the USS Righteous. Q even appears fully Borgified at various points throughout. A year earlier, Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo users could play Star Trek Deep Space Nine Crossroads of Time, part of the 4th mission, which sees Commander Sisko travel back in time to his own past aboard the Saratoga at the Battle of Wolf 359. If you prefer your Borg games to be board games, the Star Trek Adventures tabletop RPG core rulebook from 2017 contains several references to Wolf 359, including the less than optimistic pre-battle personal log of one Livia aboard the USS Melbourne. On the following page, the core rulebook gives the number of the attacking cube as 632. The Best of Both Worlds cube is also sometimes semi-officially known as Locutus's cube, which is distinct from Locutus's cube in the video game Star Trek Armada. Finally, and speaking of Q once more, Star Trek Online previously included a mission, The State of Q, in which the player was sent back in time to prevent the death of Commander Sisko aboard the Saratoga at Wolf 359. The game currently features the new Wolf 359 Memorial Station, composed of 28 salvaged ships. In 2024, the Battle of Wolf 359 was also added to Star Trek Online's historical simulations as part of the Both Worlds season. Number 2. Multiverse of Massacres. The Many Worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics isn't just good for variations on cake and combat badges. In parallels, Worf's surprise party-hopping trip across the universe also included the Worst of Worlds, an Enterprise D that hailed from a universe in which the Borg had destroyed the Federation. There was one very grim way for the Best of Both Worlds parter to have been concluded. Beta Canon has imagined other possibilities for the Battle of Wolf 359 itself. In the Shatnerverse novel Spectre, the Mirror Universe's Wolf 359 didn't involve the Borg at all. Instead, it was a fight between the Terran Empire and the Klingon-Cardassian alliance lasting 3 days. Terran losses were Federation of Primes multiplied by 10. On a comparatively lighter note, if only for the fun crossover, IDW's 2012 8-issue Star Trek The Next Generation Doctor Who Assimilation Squared comic book miniseries also featured the Battle of Wolf 359 from its own multiversal Borg Cybermen perspective. At the end of the 6th and into the 7th issue, the 11th Doctor, Amy Pond and Rory Williams take the TARDIS back in time to Wolf 359. Once there, aboard the Borg cube, Pond implores the Doctor to do something to prevent the thousands of death. The latter simply replies that the battle is a fixed point in time and can't be changed. Number 1. The battles that follow. Wolf 359 was a singular event, lasting a matter of minutes. Its ramifications would echo through the decades. In the immediate aftermath, the Enterprise D returned home to Earth, and Captain Picard went back to France, not to fight Borg, but his brother in the mud, a foray into serialized post-trauma. Now widely lauded, family was controversial even among the writing staff at the time, according to the Star Trek The Next Generation companion. After all, this was the only episode of The Next Generation not to feature the bridge. Rick Berman initially wanted a science subplot to complete the episode. Weeks of trying later, that idea was abandoned, and family was allowed to be all about family. The trauma of Picard's assimilation wasn't readdressed so openly until Star Trek First Contact. As detailed in the 50-year mission The Next 25 Years, writers had considered returning to Locutus in All Good Things, a storyline which would have also somehow involved Hugh. Evidently, that was dropped in favour of just 3 time periods. One might argue that all of Star Trek Picard was the resultant of Wolf 359. The now retired Admiral, grown older, was still processing his assimilation and the devastation wrought, able to share with a handful of only those who could truly empathise, including those who still recognised him as Locutus. What was believed to be Irumodic syndrome was in fact the biological vestige of his time with the collective, a physical manifestation of his trauma that killed his body whilst others rushed to spare his mind. Star Trek Picard also gave voice to another survivor of Wolf 359, Captain Liam Shaw, an ensign at the time of the battle, a grease monkey aboard the USS Constance. Like Sisko before him, Shaw was forced to confront the man who was Locutus, the Borg who'd set the world on fire. Ensign Shaw also appears, briefly but to chilling effect, in JTFX's Wolf 359 The Massacre Part 1. On the Star Trek Picard Season 3 Blu-ray bonus feature Making of The Last Generation, actor Todd Stashwick called the holodeck confrontation scene his favourite. "They wrote me poetry," he went on to add, before concluding that, "As the Star Trek fan who, as a young man, watched those episodes, to know now that the character that I'm playing is somewhere in that starfield was a little mind-blowing." The 24th of September 2025 is 35 years to the day since the Best of Both Worlds Part 2 first aired. That starfield is still a gravesite. The battle rages on. And that's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much for watching along, and thank you so much to Jack, who wrote the article that this is based on. You are awesome and wonderful. Thank you so much, Pedro, who has edited this video as well. Folks, you are awesome, you are lovely. Please make sure that you are subscribing, liking, and sharing. Please follow us on the various socials. We're at TrekCulture or at TrekCulture YT. I am at Sean Ferrick on the various socials as well. If you want to grab some merch, you can do so by following the link under the description of this video. If you are feeling inclined, I have a Patreon, which you can find on my socials. Any support is very, very, very much appreciated. Until I see you again, folks, make sure that you live long and prosper. You are wonderful. You are awesome. To everyone out there, put peace out into the world. Put love out into the world. To our friends in Congo, in Sudan, and Palestine, know that we are with you. To our friends in Ukraine, we are with you. Thank you so much, everyone. See you soon.